Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen.
Okay, everybody. Hey, welcome to this week's Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen. And this week it's my question. And today we're going to talk about three of our favorite musicians that play the instrument that we do. So in other words, I'm going to talk about drummers. Rodney's going to talk about keyboardists or synthesists. Joe is going to talk about guitar players, and Dan will talk about bass players. At least I hope they will. On some other night, I might talk about some drummers that I've mentioned before, like Pete Thomas from The Attractions, or Clem Burke from Blondie, or even Bobby Shayer from Bad Religion. I mean, those are all drummers that I like and I, think may have influenced me a little bit. I don't know. But tonight I'm going to choose three totally different people that I also like. The first one I'm going to talk about is named Bill Bruford. He's an English drummer who has played with many prog rock bands over the years, such as Yes and King Crimson, multiple times with King Crimson in various incarnations. He even played with Genesis. And of course, he even played in Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe. He has a sort of very technical style, which is not really something that I'm adept at. He's interesting because he was one of the first people to embrace electronic drums. Like, he incorporated the Simmons drum kit pieces into his regular drum kit. I think first notably with King Crimson in the early 80s. And he's actually retired from playing now. He retired in 2009. He went back to college and he got a PhD in music, and he writes books and he lectures on playing music, playing drums, but he actually doesn't really play live anymore, so which is very interesting. So he's my first choice. My second choice, I would like to talk about a fellow named Jim Eno from the band called Spoon. I think he's a great drummer with a very economic, simple style, parts that are just right for the song. The other thing about him that I like, though, is that he and Brett started the band Spoon, and they've always done like their own recording of themselves and released a lot of the records with their own recordings. And so Jim has become a great producer and engineer, and he runs a studio in Austin. And one of the things that I've always liked about him is that he always gets amazing drum sounds on the recordings. So I really like the way his drum sound and his parts on their records. Also, he is not related to Brian Eno. And the third drummer, who kind of needs no introduction, he just passed away a year or two ago, and I'm speaking of Charlie Watts from Rolling Stones. Again, a economy of style player, an amazing timekeeper. He was always the solid rock behind all the crazy stuff that was going on out in front of him by the other guys in the band. Always a very sharp, snappy dresser. He's made some best dressed lists over the years. I think he married his wife before the Stones got famous and stayed married. I think they were married for like 57 years or something. So an amazing drummer, and I'll repeat it here in case nobody's heard this amazing story, and I'm sure that everybody else in this band has heard this story. One night in the early 80s, an intoxicated Mick Jagger phoned Watts' hotel room in the middle of the night asking, "Where's my drummer?" And Watts reportedly got up and got dressed in a suit, shaved, put on a tie and some shine shoes, and went downstairs. And he punched Mick Jagger in the face and said, "Never call me your drummer again. You're my fucking singer." And that's Charlie Watts in a nutshell. So anyway, those are my three.
And I don't know if you want to point out that the Simmons drums were, of course, invented by Richard Simmons.
Oh, that's true. Yes.
Remember when you went to the beach and Greenpeace tried to push you back out in the water? Oh, sweating to the oldies. We met Richard Simmons once. Dan Mapp and I did, but that's another story for another time, people.
All right, big question for next week.
Yeah, well, I actually have. It's one of the ones I want to put up at one point, which is called "Brush with Minor Fame." Okay, so I am, as Steve pointed out, I'm not so much a keyboardist as I am an electronic musician or just a guy that likes to make weird noises with synths. Everybody else in the band, if you sit them down on the piano, can probably do a lot better than me. But is anybody else in the band willing to stay up for 3 days straight without sleep, creating the sound of a buffalo farting under the water? That's what I do. So, and I take these weird little sounds and they inspire me to make songs. All right, so here are 3 great keyboardists. I don't know if I can say my favorite. And as usual, I have to exclude my friends and people I've worked with. All right, so number 1, John Carpenter. I love John Carpenter. I love the sounds John Carpenter gets. When I was young and we first got HBO, there's a movie on called Assault on Precinct 13. And not only did I love it, but I began to become, I think it was the first time I became aware of sound design. And I'm thinking, wow, and around the same time I saw Suspiria, so they both did that. But I'm like, man, this is a really creepy, like off-putting sound. He was very ahead of the curve on that. And you can go see him live now. He's fantastic. He could probably sit down and play the piano beautifully. He's a really good musician, but he chooses not to. Again, he just wants to make weird, creepy sounds, and we love it. We're here for him. Up next, Daniel Miller. Daniel Miller was the normal. He was basically the guy who gave us the template for synth punk. Daniel Miller is famous for the quote, "The thing that pissed me off about punk was you needed to be able to play 3 chords to be a punk, but to be a synth punk, you only needed 1 finger." And we all know what finger he's talking about. Yeah. So he had also done, he's the guy behind Warm Leatherette, TVOD. So the reason we have people like Gary Newman and stuff like that is because people listen to Daniel Miller. Now, the other thing he did was a thing that Joe and I loved when we were young, which was called the Silicone Teens. And there's an album, Silicone Teens, called Music for Parties, and it is the best use of the synthesizer ever. He took a bunch of old like Chuck Berry songs and you just basically and the song Judy in the Skies by Jerry and the Pacemakers, and they just worked them out on synths back in the day type synths. So I love minimal synth. So it's very minimal and it's fun. And if you have a party, put on songs from that album. It's absolutely perfect. And again, he was doing stuff with a synth back when nobody else was really, using these cool, cheap little synths to do neat things. All right, up next, at this point, when you ask people for synth heroes, everybody, of course, mentions German minimalist synth pioneer. But I'm not actually, I'm going to jump over him because I'm so tired of hearing about that guy. And I'm going to go with somebody who's out there, been out there since, I guess, the 90s, still doing cool stuff. It's Klaus Larson from Leather Strip. Klaus Larson still makes very interesting sounds, and also he's fascinating live. He was one of the pioneers. Usually now when you go to see an act, it's not a bunch of guys up there with guitar, other than us, guitar, bass, and drums. It's usually one person up there with an electronic device. Sometimes they step away from it, but he's always been riveting like that. Japanese Bodies is a fantastic song, and one of the things I do if I'm somewhere public and I get sort of cornered by somebody who spent $35,000 on like Eurorack synths to make bleeps and blorps or like hipster synths or whatever. And so he goes, "I hear you're in the synths." I go, "Yeah, so am I." I immediately mention Leather Strip and their eyes just kind of glaze over. They have no idea. And that's kind of sad. And if people really, seriously, check out Leather Strip, check out Klaus Larson, great guy, still doing interesting stuff. And I was kind of torn between him and Ronan Harris from BMV Nation, but I went with Klaus Larson and I stick by that. So those are my 3. They'd be John Carpenter, Daniel Miller, and Klaus Larson, who is Leather Strip. There's really, one person.
So Guitarist, 3 guitar heroes of mine are kind of influential. I hope that's not an insult to any of them. And they all came to my attention in the same year, right before the Dead Milkmen formed as an actual band. First is Kirkwood of the Meat Puppets. I really like his playing style, especially in the first 4 or 5. Well, all of the Milkmen's albums, actually. I like his playing style. Very fast, distorted at first with the first couple albums, and on the third album was very clean. And I tried to replicate some of that, but never could quite get it. But I like that the way he plays guitar. And the other one is another one is D Boone, Dennis Dale Boone, of the band the Minutemen. Short-lived, unfortunately, because he died in a car accident. But I loved his chunky, clean sound, and the way his solos. I could never emulate or figure them out, but I tried to copy his chunky, clean sound in various early Milkmen songs, or at least I was inspired by it. I didn't really copy it. And third is Bob Moog of the band Husker Du, especially in his Husker Du days. I liked his dissonant, even though he was distorted a lot and I played clean, I liked his dissonant guitar solos. They're pretty great.
You know, I was reading an interview with the band Health. This was kind of an odd thing. And the guitarist from Health cited you as like an influence. And he was talking about like the clean guitar and everything. And I'm like, it's just so weird because I had no idea. And I'm reading, you know, I like the band, and I've seen them play with like Youth Code. So I'm like, oh, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, German.
Well, I'm honored.
Yeah, I just thought it was cool. I was like, nobody ever cites me as an influence.
Well, I chose 3 out of many. And one is probably obvious, probably talked about him before, but Mike Watt, the Minutemen. And you know, it's more, I have a lot of respect for him as a musician too, because he's still doing it. And like Joe said, the Minutemen, their life as a band was cut short, yet he never stopped. I think that the next band he was in was also with George Hurley on drums and the guy from Ohio. They did.
Ed from Ohio, yeah.
But yeah, he just never stopped. And I also understand he's done like session work for even like pop music, you know. So I don't know. I have a lot of respect for that. And plus, just his playing, I always feel like he maybe did the similar approach that I did. Like you approach the bass as like another guitar, because he just kind of like he was doing a lot of like counter stuff to what D Boone was playing on guitar. So yeah, Mike Watt was one. And yeah, this isn't even like influential. It's just ones that I like. And I actually really, I like Les Claypool a lot as a bass player. I know that's another like kind of typical one, but I'm not even a huge Primus fan anymore. I was for a while, but he's just very inventive with the bass, and he plays a lot of times he plays a 6-string like fretless bass, which just sounds like, I don't know, it's almost like it's a whole band of itself. But yeah, and he's able to sing. I always have respect, well, I guess except for Sting, for bass players that can sing. I don't know, you know what, Sting, he was doing some pretty complicated stuff, you know, bass versus vocals with rhythms and stuff. But yeah, Les Claypool, and he's another one that he's still going. He plays tons of different little side projects here and there. Primus is still playing. And the third one is Plibbity Gibbet, also known as James Cooper, or Coop, of the Plibmen, who is just incredible. He has been playing like fretless bass for the past like year or so with the band. I know he has experience playing it, but it adds a different sound to it. He's always just right there with the drummer, Spacey Plibbit. And he's great, does backing vocals too. And if you have a chance to see the Plibmen, if you're watching this, you got to see them. Just saw them again at Dobbs that Saturday. I got there late. Yeah, I heard there was some crazy German performer there. I can't remember his name, Heisenberg or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are my three.
We should do this again sometime, but what we should do is we should say, all right, you have to pick somebody who's just come on the scene in the last like 5-10 years. Because I'm always like doing this, like, you know, the particularly a lot of like, you know, front people. And I'm always like, whoa, you know, where did this person come from? Or, you know, it's always like, you know, so that would be an interesting one to do. Like, okay, who's popped up in the last 5-10 years, and we can do it with your instrument that, you know, or really blows you away. So. And then the youngsters will watch the show.
Okay, thanks for all your answers. They're all great. I'm looking forward to the links that you guys provide.
Provide links.
So let's move on to recommendations. I'm going to recommend a YouTube video, and I believe it was sponsored by the Moog synthesizer company based in North Carolina, and they've re-released the Model D monophonic synthesizer for crazy money. It's like $5,000 or something, I don't know. But anyway, there's a great video that was put together by the Gregory Moog Ensemble, doing a song, I guess, that they composed called Archimedes Screw. And it's about a dozen people playing Moog synthesizers, accompanied by a woman who just plays a little bit of percussion in the background. And you got to watch it. It's a really great ensemble piece played by a dozen Moog Model D synthesizers. We'll provide a link, of course.
I won't pay more than $100 for a synthesizer. That's my advice to people. Like, get the cheapest synth you can and make it your own. Just make it sound like you. Okay, for my recommendations, first of all, let's start with music that you won't see on the radio or hear on TV. I hope I pronounce this right, because the band is Hem Netjer. That's HEM space NETJER. The song, I'll put a link up to a song called Elemental Cry, and I have been listening to this over and over again. This is the most primitive, feral, howling. It just sounds like if you came across a ritual in the woods, this is what it would be. And the percussionist, and we're talking about one of my favorite percussionists, is Scott Fox from my Vardensphere, and he kills it on this. He is really, really good. So I'm going to put up the link to this. Play it. You will listen to it again and again. I think I will begin my December radio show with this song. I know I spoiled it for everybody. All right, up next, and this is probably the biggest recommendation I'm going to give on this show ever. If you can, there's a service called Wondrum. Or I think it's pronounced Wondrium or whatever. I have it. And it's basically college courses and all sorts of interesting lectures that you can watch. And I really recommend, particularly reading some of the comments section. You folks might want to check out some of the history and math ones. But the thing is, there's a one new feature that they have on there is called Secrets of the Occult. Now, I want to point out, this is not like Leonard Nimoy with In Search Of. It's not like Jack Osborne gets in a UFO and goes in search of Bigfoot's ghost. No, this is a serious academic lecture. It's done by a real professor. His name is Richard B. Spence. He is not to be confused with Richard B. Spencer. Joe, will you put up the graphic, please? We're now showing you a graphic of how you can tell the difference between Richard B. Spence and Richard B. Spencer. Richard B. Spence, good. Richard B. Spencer, bad. Anyway, what he does is when I listen to a lot of history podcasts or watch a lot of history stuff, I often wind up yelling at the person, going, how do you not know that? Why are you not mentioning this? This guy knows stuff I didn't know. And I didn't know about Table 29 before I saw this. I know about Table 29 now. I can't sleep because I know about Table 29. Stay out of Griffith Park if you're watching this in LA. And he does a great job. He debunks a lot of stuff. He debunks the whole, thing that Barbara Bush was Aleister Crowley's daughter. Her mother had an affair with Crowley. So, yeah, but the math doesn't work out as to when she got pregnant. So, yeah, or supposedly had an affair with Crowley. You'll never be able to watch The Wizard of Oz again the same way. He goes into all the sort of hidden stuff that went in The Wizard of Oz. It's very, very smart. And it's also made me think of Joe as a magician, because Joe did something very magical in that he, it's sort of thing with H.P. Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft made up the Necronomicon. And in the 70s, people said, hey, let's make the Necronomicon. And they made their own. Joe thought up a fictional band and through sheer will brought it into reality. That's a magical thing. Joe is technically a magician, a wizard. It's absolutely fascinating. You really need to see this, people, and also get Wondrum. There's a lot of great little history classes and courses and neat little features on it. But yeah, Secrets of the Occult with Richard B. Spence. It's I think it's 24 episodes to it, 24 lectures. They're all about a half hour each, and they are all fantastic.
Cool. I want to recommend a YouTube channel by a guy named Chris Turner, and he is a British rapper who does freestyle rapping, and a lot of his videos are live, where he takes topics from various members of the audience and weaves them into little rap, and that's the video. It's entertaining.
It's just probably the British complaining about their food. What rhymes with haggis?
I'd like to recommend, if you have a conflict with a family member, now is the time to resolve it. Here we are, people, it's Thanksgiving for us right now. Shooting this on Thursday night. You guys are watching this Saturday. Resolve a conflict with a family member. Do it before it's too late. If you don't do it and you lose that family member, you could regret that. So, it's time to start resolving your conflicts with family members.
And if you can't patch it up, this will cheer you up. Remember that your real family are the people who care about you and are nice to you. Very rarely do members of real brothers and sisters grow up under the same roof.
Yeah. Think of the Manson family.
There you go. There you go. They come up in the occult thing. There's actually, they have the guy, I wish I had his name down here. They have the guy who inspired Charles Manson. This is a good one. This will cheer you up. Lean in, fellas. So the guy who inspired Charles Manson had the same sort of theories, race war. He was doing this in like the 50s, and he was a guru. And what happened to him was he was blown up by two of his male members, the male members of his cult. They blew themselves up with him because it turned out he was bestowing carnal favors to their wives. So, see, that's why you need Wondrum. I fall asleep to this, and I'm just like, boom, boom, boom.
Okay, everybody, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. We've only got 10 minutes. Let's use it to compose a British rap.
Okay.
I'm sitting in my knickers, eating a Snickers, riding in the lift. I've got to practice fifth.
Wow.
Too much liquors.
What? Okay.
All right, bye.
Tune in next week, people, when this is replaced by an infomercial for some sort of cleanser.